Hiya, I'm a Zamen, and death games are pretty sick. Be it the famous Danganronpa, the show about squids who play games, or anime like Mirai Nikki, which gets worse the more you think about it, death games as a concept are very cool. It's a great way to make the player become attached to the characters, and by default, it also kicks you in the kneecaps and spits in your mouth when your favorite character dies. That said, Your Turn to Die, Death Game by Majority, is a wonderful little game that my friend spontaneously bought me while he was on vacation. Plus, check out the protagonist. Look at that hair. I love me some good uneven hair. Which was honestly more than enough motivation to get me to actually play the game. So what kind of game is it? Well, it's an interactive visual novel about this colorful cast of characters who have been kidnapped and put in a death game, with the main gimmick being that people are killed off via voting, as it is a death game by majority. So the person with the most votes dies. It's a wonderfully grim game with great visuals, solid music, and strong characterization. I'd recommend playing it. But if you just want to hear me go over the first chapter, then thank you very much, and let's get started. Oh, also, you might occasionally hear my friends Dolly and Maya, who were in the call with me as I was playing the game. Booting up the game, we are introduced to the protagonist, Sarah Chidoan, who is a self-confident, responsible, and a bit blunt. She can also be anxious and somewhat doubtful of her own abilities. Then we got her best friend, Joe Tazuna, who's a bit of a ditz, but he's loyal, upbeat, and very considerate. Dude even walks Sarah home, because he knows that she's been hounded by a stalker. Though he plays it off mainly because mentioning the stalker would stress Sarah out. Arriving at her home, Sarah finds the lights turned off, with it being eerily quiet. Joe accompanies her inside, where they come across Sarah's mother, who's been knocked to the ground and is seemingly bleeding from her head. From there, the pair run upstairs to call the police and try to find Sarah's father. But upstairs, a group of individuals knock Sarah and Joe unconscious, kidnapping them. When they awaken, they find themselves strapped down to beds. A phone then rings and informs the pair that they have 5 minutes to escape or be crushed to death. Joe finds a key in his pocket, and I quickly tell him to use it on himself. 'Cause, fun fact, Your Turn to Die gives you choices. The player gets to decide how Sarah will react or question things, and gets to make occasional decisions for her. Once free, Joe starts looking for a way to save Sarah and manages to do so with only 10 seconds or so to spare. It turns out the key that Joe used to save himself could be scraped down with sandpaper to create a thinner key that would then free Sarah. Both free, they exit the room and arrive in a pitch black hallway, with only one way to go. They proceed forward, and eventually the ground gives way under them, and the pair plummets into a room full of main characters. 9 to be specific. We got Professor Mishima, a teacher, Reiko Yabasame, a singer and possible P5 reference, Kai Sato, a wannabe house husband who Sarah thinks she's met before. There's also Kyutaro Burgerberg. I think his name and appearance say more than I ever could. Then there's a police officer named Keiji Shinogi. Now Ego Koro, an art student in college. Gin Ibushi, elementary school kid and gamer. And then we have Sohiori, unemployed. Then there's Kana Kazuchi, a middle schooler who questions how Joe and I arrived together. It turns out everyone here experienced that same death trap. Now and the Professor Mishima were together, while Kana endured the death trap with her older sister, who is not here.
Is that hyperpigmentation?
So, gonna go on a limb here.
Nope.
Think she might have died?
Why didn't you tell me to look away?
What do you mean? That wasn't scary!
Fuck.
Quickly, we change the subject. Cause, hey, look at that. Kyutaro, the big guy, has a box. One that he apparently received during his trial. Opening up the box, there's a severed head inside. It's of a human-sized doll. And a note that asks everyone to find the rest of the doll's body. Without any other direction and no way out of this large space, everyone reluctantly agrees to start looking for the body parts, with Sou, a blue-haired unemployed bro, deciding to accompany me to the cafeteria which is down the hall, where we find a dart and a lighter, along with a secret pink room that has the doll's torso. This is where the doll will be put together, and here we also find 6 dummy bullets, which I immediately take to go show Keiji the police officer because, well, I imagine he knows the most about guns? And after I show him the fake bullets, Keiji just hands Sarah a very real gun and 3 bullets he found, which both Sarah and So are confused about because he's the cop and the adult in the room. Sarah keeps the gun and is promptly put into the role of gunhaver by playing Russian roulette. Yeah, the kidnappers lock everyone in this room, and in order to escape, everyone needs to play Russian roulette. My allies each take an empty seat, while 5 other seats are filled with very realistic dolls. Sarah needs to pull the trigger on every single person in a seat, and she has in total 9 bullets, 6 fake ones and 3 real ones. However, Sarah gets to load the gun. So I had her put in 1 real bullet, 2 dummies, and repeat. Because if you fire 2 bullets, then you know what bullet is next.
Start off with your best friend.
You know what? Yeah, he trusted me. Why not?
Joe.
We got this.
Shoot Joe? Yes.
Oh god!
My hand
My
slipped.
hand slipped.
Fail at Russian roulette.
I did not play that Russian roulette. So this little game goes by without issue, and everyone then offers Sarah their gratitude. Especially Kai, the house husband, who gets a little too expressive and makes Sarah come to a startling realization. Why now? Why did I only just notice? Why did I remember? Kai is... that stalker. Wait, what?
Exactly. I was about to say I don't trust him.
Kai is not a stranger. Kai is Sarah's stalker. He was following her and Joe at the very start of the game. That's why she knows him. It's very concerning. Continuing on the search for more body parts, Sarah runs into Kana the middle schooler, who has a question. Was it possible for Kana to save her older sister? She and her sister were put into the same death game as Sarah and Joe, where they were tied down, had 1 key, and then had to whittle the key down with sandpaper. Kana, in her game, didn't know that you could do that. So with the 1 key, she was saved, and her sister died. Kana wants confirmation of that fact. I and my council have some back and forth and decide to eventually come clean. But at the last moment, Professor Mishima swoops in and employs an advanced teaching method known as lying, telling Kana that Joe and I broke through the restraints via brute force, to then explain that it would have been impossible for Kana to save her sister, since both her and her sister are light and lacking in physical strength. It's a complete lie that keeps Kana at ease. I can see why Professor Mishima did it, because telling Kana the truth would basically be like, wowzers, you really did let your sister die like an idiot, bozo, oof lamau, L plus ratio skill issue. And then like, throw in a slur or something, I don't know. After that little encounter, the whole crew finds the remaining body parts, one in a game of darts and another in a vending machine. Though I do want to mention this discovery that was made in the bar, where Gin and Professor Mishima uncover a list of people that's organized by who can drink and who can't drink, revealing that there were supposed to be a lot more people here. A lot. Who my friends and I can only assume died, just like Kana's sister, unable to survive the first trial. Anyway, main point, having collected all of Misao's body parts, the group assembles the doll, creating life. Or, well, turning a doll on because it's actually some kind of android who calls herself Sumili. I'm just gonna call her Smiley because that's what my friends and I defaulted to calling her. Smiley says that she is here to support us right into a death game. Because as she explains, everyone here has been kidnapped to participate in a death game by majority. Ah ha 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 ha. Ah ha 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 ha. I apologize. Smiley explains that going forward, after this, everyone will be forced to take parts in death games where by the end of it, everyone will have to vote for someone to die. So now, to get us into the swing of things, everyone is going to vote for someone to make sure that the voting mechanic works. So I reconvene with my council, and we eventually decide to vote for Kana. This thing. I thought it was funny. But this isn't a serious vote, so it's nothing. The collar was visibly changing color.
Ah! Ah! Reborn! Ah!
Professor Mishima! The smell lingered in the air. The smell I'd never experienced before. The smell of human flesh burning. The sound of blood evaporating.
Take it off! Take it off, old man! Stay away!
Professor Mishima pushed Nao away. And with that, he fell backwards in front of Kana. I was wrong. Looking over the votes that were kept anonymous, it seems like most people opted to vote for themselves instead of others, with Professor Mishima gaining 3 votes, while Kana gained 2 votes. We then watched as Professor Mishima's collar. I didn't mention that earlier, but upon arriving here, everyone is wearing a metal collar. His collar tightens and burns bright, causing it to sear through its flesh and decapitate the man before everyone's eyes. The sight is so horrific that Nao, who was a former student of Professor Mishima, has a brief bout of insanity, while Kana wets herself, and Sarah is sickened to her core. As that goes on, Smiley just antagonizes everyone, rubbing in how senseless this death was, which is only brought to an end when Kai smacks her in the back of the head with his frying pan, which forces Smiley to retreat and brings an end to part 1 of chapter 1 of Your Turn to Die. Now, before getting into part 2, I want to divulge a bit on my thoughts, because I think this is a pretty solid opener for a whole new game. There's a colorful cast who are charming, endearing, and have some top tier, memorable designs. Like, I don't know, I just really like Sou's fit, and he looks crazy cool to me. Plus, you also have Kana here, whose bucket on her head means that I'm not gonna forget her anytime soon. And then there's Reiko, who, she's hot. And she reminds me of the Joker from Persona 5 Reload, episode I guess. Plus, I already feel the heavy weight of accountability, because I gave Kana a vote, and because of that, she was 1 vote away from Professor Mishima's fate, meaning that going forward, I will try and dedicate a lot of effort into protecting Kana because I feel really bad about that. And there's this really big sense of mystery, because if you couldn't tell, we genuinely do not know anything about the kidnappers or what the goal of this death game is. Like in most death game media, there's some kind of cause for it, like at least something like money, or like some kind of vendetta, or Kenjaku, or like anything. But here, we don't get any context, we are just in the thick of it. Also, these characters are a bit strange. Why the hell did Keiji give us the gun? He's the police officer! And apparently, Kai is a stalker. And that's kinda scary. Those thoughts divulged. I should get into the habit of saying that if you are enjoying this video, consider subscribing. Weekly videos are a thing. Now, back to game. Now it is time for Your Turn to Die, Death Game by Majority, Chapter 1, Part 2. This part begins with everyone finding out that if the vote had ended in a tie, then no one would have died, meaning Professor Mishima's death was completely avoidable. And all we had to do to learn this was read a paper that was on the back of the door we entered. It's very tragic. Being left with Mishima's corpse, the group gradually disperses and Sarah goes to find Kai, where the light goes out and she finds a card that reads, "No one else should know the existence of this card, or else the card holder will die." When the lights turn back on, Sarah looks at the back of the card and sees the role of Keymaster. That's probably not a good thing. And now Kai is missing, so that's concerning. Thankfully, I meet up with Sou, the unemployed guy who leads me into a pitch black room away from any witnesses, where he shows Sarah a laptop he found, though it's password locked. So while Sou works on that, Sarah begins to look for clothes for Kana, because she kind of had a bit of an accident at the end of last chapter. We end up finding clothes for Kana on a very convenient Kana-sized doll that looks exactly like her. That's really unsettling. Very. As thanks for getting her the clothes, Kana then asks that Sarah stops being kind to her, which I like. Though my heart absolutely hates this because Kana is saying this as a reaction to the fact that Professor Mishima and I lied to her about being able to save her sister. Kana, in short, just wants Sarah, me, to stop lying to her, and to just let her know the reality of the situation. I understand, but I will make any and all future decisions based upon how I feel rather than this non-legally binding contract. Following that, things slow down as Sarah has a chat with Joe in the bar, and, well, we see why these two are friends, as they just get real with each other. It's a nice scene, because it sets up the idea that the whole death game really is wearing on Joe, and really is wearing on Sarah. Like, literally, less than an hour ago, we watched Professor Mishima get brutally beheaded, so this check-in is very nice. And it does build unease as Joe plants seeds of doubt in Sarah's mind. Keiji, this fine man, claims to be a police officer, but aside from his own word, we don't have any way of proving that. He doesn't have an ID or something like that. And it's just kinda strange how, in many scenes, he just implicitly puts his trust in Sarah. In Russian roulette, in a few of the puzzles in the last area, and just in conversation, he seems to trust Sarah completely. Those thoughts in mind, Sarah leaves Joe and arrives in this mirrored room, having seen a silhouette in the dark here. And this room is a puzzle that I thoroughly love. Because it's just about making these two rooms match. I live for this. And it's so fun to give and take until eventually they are equal. They are symmetry. That then allows me to enter the back room, singular, with this locker that in its depths lies a fainted prisoner. Carrying him back to the rest of the group, I set him down in the care of possible policeman Keiji, and then rush back to Sou as there's been a commotion, and when I return to the dark room, Sou is on the floor knocked out and the laptop is gone. And on the floor is another roll card. The sacrifice. I don't get to look at it as Sou awakens and he questions what I'm looking at. However, since these cards say you should not share the information, or else the card holder will die, I lie and tell Sou that it's nothing. I don't have anything, shut up. Yeah. Quickly, we surmise that someone must have knocked out Sou, and after a quick check, everyone realizes that now the redhead is nowhere to be found. So a search party is formed, but I take a detour to go check in on the prisoner-looking dude from earlier. Turns out he's not hostile, and is a captive just like the rest of us. He's got one of the collars too, so. He explains that earlier he ran away and hid at the sight of Sarah, because he overheard the game of Russian roulette that I played earlier, and thought that Sarah had just shot down 9 people without any remorse. And I guess he is right to be a bit worried, as Sarah is currently the only person here who is armed and dangerous. Also, I should say, the prisoner here, his name is Gonbi Yamada, which is basically like saying his name's John Doe. So, yeah, it's a fake name, but he's chill, so I'm not that worried. Leaving him, I resume my search for now and eventually find her hunched over in the back of the kitchen carrying a box that contains Professor Mishima's decapitated head. You see, earlier, the room where Mishima's corpse lied was to be cleared out and cleaned. But upon hearing that, now grabbed the professor's head and stuffed it in a box. The box where we had Smiley's head, as to not completely lose him. It's a very sad sight, and the conversation that unfolds is far from pleasant, as now she is dancing on a razor's edge, with me, Sarah, holding the razor. If you'll recall, Professor Mishima died because he got 3 votes during the fake test vote. The reason why he got 3 votes is because he voted for himself and instructed Now to vote for her as well. He did so to ensure that if something was wrong with the vote, he would take responsibility for it. Which I'm able to get across to Now despite my ineptitude due to my earnesty, bringing her back to the world of sanity, and giving me a head in an empty box. Oh. It turns out Now never had the severed head. That's weird. It's so weird that I decide to go and have another chat with Joe, who's at the bar and seems to be holding the weight of the world on his shoulders. But just by chatting with Sarah, all the tension in the room vanishes, and the two of us just reminisce. They think back to a date that Joe had with Ryoko, a date that was barely a success. It was barely a success because Joe had no idea what to talk about on a date, and so he and this Ryoko girl just yapped about Sarah. It's a cute scene. I like Joe a lot, and the scene ends with the two of us affirming that we will have each other's back, always. And following this, I am then brought to the first proper death game. As a note, everyone was then kidnapped again and brought into these pitch black rooms, where the game is explained to by Smiley via a TV screen. I shall now explain how this death game works by reading off the wiki. Ahem. Participants must argue and decide who will be killed. Every player has a role card. Most players will have a commoner card that has no special function. There are 3 special cards. Whoever has the Keymaster card, in this case Sarah, cannot be voted as the one to die, or else everyone dies. The Sage, through divination, knows who the Keymaster is. The Sacrifice can only live if they are voted for as the victim, at which point they can choose one other participant to save. The Sacrifice also has 2 votes. With the rules explained, Sarah sips a bit of water and steps through some doors where she's reunited with the rest of the cast as the first official death game by majority begins. And it starts off with a bombshell, as So claims to be the Keymaster, which is the role that Sarah has. We have that card. I am then presented with the option to dispute the claim, but I choose to bite my tongue and don't refute it because, well, I want to see where he's going with this. Also, my footage gets choppy around here because I was recording for like 3 hours straight and my laptop did not like that. Yutaro then speaks up and comes up with a plan. we should all just vote for that loser-looking guy over there, Gonbi. We don't know who he is, so just, bang bang. However, that would be a bit dangerous, as he may very well be the sacrifice, which would result in everyone being killed. Folks start hearing him out, but Gonbi isn't gonna go down without a fight, and he makes his argument, saying that Sarah should be voted in, because by having the only weapon, she is a dictator who can use it to make everyone submit to her will. Though I am able to refute this claim by fumbling with the menu for quite a bit, and then presenting this box I found earlier. This box that used to contain a knife that now had previously seen, meaning that someone else besides Sarah is armed and very dangerous. And that then helps Sarah prove her point that she's not some dictator. However, that was a bit of a distraction, and the group hasn't made any headway in picking a person to vote. So again, Kyutaro interjects another idea. Let's vote for the weakest link. Now, Kana and Gin. The girl who is currently in mourning, and the two children, sparking a series of events that result in each of these three standing up for themselves. Kana tries to play the game by saying that she doesn't care what happens, but this has the effect of making everyone think that she might be the sacrifice, which would kill everyone except for her and one other person. But there's no way that Kana could play that game, right? While with Gin, he reveals that he saw a list of names and occupations, one of which was the occupation of murderer, which Sarah is able to piece together and identifies Gonbi as Alice Yabasumi, older brother of that Reiko girl, and also full-time murderer 9 to 5. Meanwhile, now, despite her prior behavior, is able to help Sarah make multiple realizations. Number 1, remember that knife that's missing? Yeah, Soft Boy Kai has it, and he used it to threaten Now into attacking So. The attack on So was done so that Kai could reclaim the laptop, because apparently both he and Sarah would be in big trouble if the laptop's contents were revealed, as this laptop belongs to Kai. And that's correct, because So then reveals that he actually unlocked the laptop. The password was Chidoan, Sarah's last name, along with 4 emails that he managed to read. The first was a list of potential participants. The second was a message of loyalty towards Sarah. The third was another claim of loyalty. And the fourth was a message that Sarah and her friend Joe are looking forward to the games. With that information, So accuses Kai, Sarah, and Joe of working with the kidnappers. But it's not the smoking gun he thinks it is, because people already trust Sarah. She's already demonstrated a willingness to help others and protect others. So even with the accusation, most people can kinda just disregard it, because they trust Sarah. And that seemingly pisses So off. So much so that he crashes out and changes, becoming a villain who thinks everyone else is weak and worthless, with only Sarah serving as a worthy foe, like this is a battle shonen or something, devolving into a cackling fiend who mimics the aura of Sand's Undertale. And thus our wills clash as So attempts to challenge Sarah's trustworthiness and accuses her of working with the kidnappers, going on and on about how we must be in cahoots due to the emails. But we don't have the laptop anymore, and we are currently trapped in a game of his word versus mine. And I, as Sarah, already have the trust, while So is a lonely loser. Even still, he doesn't give up, trying to pry on everyone's anxiety and unease by slipping in the idea of how painful it would be if Sarah was an enemy. Or what if Sarah was the sacrifice? What if Sarah was the true villain? And this is where I finally decide to show Sarah's hand, revealing her role as Keymaster. Which I will admit does sound incredibly sus, But now it's a battle of who is the Keymaster. And I had to say it then and there to keep the embers still burning. And that then narrows the vote of who's going to die. I have to choose who I get to vote for, and I decide to vote for Sarah, which you can barely see among the lag. I should not have been recording for 3 hours, it really messes things up. From that round of voting, the final players are now Kana, Kai, Joe, Sou, and Sarah. In the thick of it, Sarah begins to panic, but our friendly neighborhood police officer Keiji calms her down and convinces her to lock the hell in. The final round starts, and it is time to uncover who the sage is before the game concludes in 20 minutes. Because if we can uncover the sage, we can fully disprove Sou's claim of being the Keymaster. But there's also the sacrifice to worry about, because the sacrifice gets 2 votes. With all this information, I begin applying statements and make a grave revelation. At the start of the round, Jean overheard Joe say, "If you pick Sarah, it'll be a massacre." Let's talk about gameplay for a second here. Your Turn to Die, for the most part, is a bit of a visual novel and a point-and-click investigation game. However, here, during the main game, there's a new gameplay style, akin to Ace Attorney, where you store statements and apply it to testimonies. By storing statements, you're basically objecting to it, and then proving or disproving a fact. You can also apply evidence, and that leads to making great discoveries. Your objection moment. Back to the plot now. And Joe is currently refusing to say his role, which is odd because he initially said he doesn't care. But now it's I won't say. Joe cannot say his role. And the only roles that lead to a massacre are the sacrifice and the Keymaster. And if I know I'm the Keymaster, that must mean that the only way Joe could know of my role and know of the massacre if Joe is the sage. I say it out loud and shock everyone because in a sense, it's me trying to save myself from being voted, but Joe once again has my back, saying that Sarah is trying to save everyone. He then admits to being the sage and reveals the identity of the Keymaster in exchange for people not voting for him. Yet this action causes great unease in Sarah, who feels her heartbeat increase. This action is then countered by Kana, who claims that she is the real sage, and divine that Sou is the Keymaster. What the hell is going on? Because Kana's a little kid, and there's no doubt that she's lying. And then freaking Kai speaks up and says that he's the sage and he divined that Sarah is the Keymaster. Naturally, this throws everything into chaos. And after another round of debate, Keiji corners Joe, questioning if he's really the sage, asking if he can describe the design on the Keymaster card. Joe answers, a key. Which is... it's wrong. It's a lock, leading Sarah to one final line of logic by checking the rules. The sage cannot lie about the results of divination in any way, and only they know who has the role. Meaning, the sage should not be able to make any decisions based on card designs like Kana and Joe have been making. Meaning, neither of them are the sage. Only Kai can be the sage. But why? Why did Joe lie? And then Kai loses his edge, saying that he thought he would get the most votes due to being so untrustworthy. But now here in the last act, he's afraid to die, and then says Joe must be the sacrifice. Which makes sense, because how else would he know that Sarah is the Keymaster? He was trying to ensure his own victory by always voting for himself with both his votes, to ensure that he and Sarah could escape. Kai then implores everyone to vote for Sou, because he can't be trusted. This man will be a detriment to all of our teamwork. Kai then begs for his life in exchange for letting everyone know of all of his information. At this, Joe is incredibly stressed, begging everyone to not believe Kai, saying that he is still the sage. And then Smiley lets us know that time is up. It's over. My friends and I debrief, and we opt to vote for Joe. Both Joe and So receive 3 votes, while Kai receives 6, the majority, and is therefore sentenced to death by majority. So then taunts Kai, saying that Kai could have lived if people vote with emotion, but that's not what happened. Instead, everyone voted with logic, choosing to kill Kai, as they could not take a chance on either So or Joe being the sacrifice, because if the sacrifice is picked, they get to live, and everyone else dies. Smiley then goes ahead and confirms the roles. Kai is the sage, Sarah is the keymaster, and Joe is the sacrifice, who will now be killed as he did not receive the full vote. With his demise impending, Joe laughs and apologizes to everyone for lying, and says that even with this fate, he can't bring himself to see anyone as an enemy. Even So and Alice, that prisoner, must be good people in his eyes. Lastly, he turns to Sarah and says that he loves her. They're best friends. It's a nice sentiment. Sarah breaks down, and Smiley unleashes the Wrigglers, metal devices that embed themselves into Joe's flesh and suck out every last drop of blood in his body. Sarah is inconsolable and begs Smiley for a chance to save Joe, even if she is to die in his place, to which Smiley throws her a bone, a small device that if Sarah keeps pressing it, she can slow the Wrigglers and maybe even stop it altogether. I'm then given control, and I mash the button for as long as I can, but it's not enough, and I'm overpowered.
Keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. Stop. No, no, no. It's not working. It's not working. It's just not working. It's just not working.
Even while dead, I continue mashing. For nothing. Joe is dead, and Smiley twists the knife, revealing that there was never any chance of saving Joe. In fact, with each button press, all I did was prolong his suffering, which sends Sarah into a spiral, as her tears are unending. But Smiley doesn't care, and moves on to the main event, killing Kai. Yet, that doesn't go as planned, as Kai is one step ahead, taking the active steps to end his own life with the kitchen knife he acquired earlier. Smiley tries to act, but Q-Taro tackles her and prevents her from activating another device. Kai, in his last moments, yells to Sarah, claiming that this action is resistance, stating, "Our lives are toyed with to the enemy's whims. We are unable to save even a single person as we all die off. This is my feeble resistance. But it is one large step towards a counter-attack. It was a step I was able to take because you brought me time. It is surely not futile. I entrust them to you, Sarah. Our regrets, our hopes. I am satisfied." And Kai expires. I'm not sure if Sarah was listening, as the scene then cuts to a memory of Joe's birthday, where Sarah gifted him this quirky little dog keychain that he was always wearing. It's cute, but that's just a memory. And now in the present, only 9 of us remain. And we now have the professional murderer 9 to 5, Alice, with us. An ending sequence begins to play as I see the cast discussing the outcome of the main game. Sarah is still unresponsive. Now, Geen and Reiko all resolve to stand by Sarah to support her, while Smiley ushers everyone upstairs for the next leg in this death game. Kyutaro doesn't know how to feel about Kai. Hana and So collect themselves, with So seemingly struggling to maintain his composure in light of Joe's death, while Kana doesn't want to make Sarah sad. And lastly, Alice confronts Keiji, asking if he knows about the murder that Alice committed, because Alice claims to have killed So Hayori. What is all of this supposed to mean? There are so many plot threads in the air. Sarah's connection to the kidnappers, Kai's actual partnership with them, Alice and Reiko's relationship. Add on to that So apparently being a ghost and a real crash out Sans Undertale king. There's even robots, and this overly elaborate death game for seemingly no reason. It's so much, it's so overwhelming, and I am absolutely here for it. I am excited to cover chapter 2 as in that one, my friends and I have a crash out that I am dying to show you. But before we end the video, I want to give my final thoughts on this game, and they are very positive, because this has this Ace Attorney vibe, like specifically the Edgeworth games. It feels like that, especially in the main game. And the puzzles to get here, like the Russian roulette thing or that matching puzzle, those are really fun, and they are just nice little brain teasers. But I think what matters more is the fact that I really like these characters. Everyone except Geen has some edge to them, which gives me a desire to want to learn more about them. Like Kana, for instance, is a real standout. She really surprised me during the main game, and now I want to see how Sarah interacts with her. Also Joe's death, I imagine, will have a pretty big impact, as I really... Well, okay, Joe's death was pretty well foreshadowed, but I really like him, and was thoroughly heartbroken by how brutal his death was, and my role in it. Because I mashed that button as hard as I could. I was so panicked. Then there's also Kai, whose ending was very shocking, but in a very twistedly hopeful way. I feel like there's some kind of happiness in the far, far distance, which is sure as hell motivating. For those reasons, I really hope you join me next time when I cover the next chapter of Your Turn to Die, Death Game by Majority. This is going to be a series. I know that's a very bad omen considering the series I already have on this channel take forever to come out, but trust me, this time, this one's for real. Maybe. Hopefully. Anyway, I have been a Zamen, and please consider sticking around if you don't hate my voice, because my sole goal here is to improve my writing, editing, and speaking as I go on. Goodbye.